Prior to joining Fox in 2001, Cindy was the Vice President of Information Systems at Sony Pictures Entertainment, where she provided IT services to global motion picture and TV production, studio operations, and digital studio divisions.
Miscellaneous stuff.
Cindy has over 20 years experience in IT in the financial entertainment industries and has been honored this year as one of Computer World's premier 100 IT leaders. Today, Cindy will share with us what it looks like from the CIO's perspective. She will discuss issues that are on the CIO's desk and how her team can help or hinder on the road to achieving IT success and excellence. Please help me welcome Cindy McKenzie. There's stairs over here for the food. Thank you.
I can do that. Whoops. Well, I just went backwards. Just a sec.
I might want to move that mic over.
Yeah, I will. Just let me get it over here. Okay, don't look. We're going backwards.
We're losing control. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Great. Hi, my name's Cindy McKenzie. As said, I'm from Fox. So as the kickoff today, I really wanted to bring in line a lot of things that I think you'll be covering through the sessions over the next couple of days. So I'm going to try to be provocative and bring up some things that I think I want you to really think about the way things are changing and transforming in the IT space, how you have to change with that if you're going to remain relevant, and some of the things you can do to do that. So that's what I'll be covering today. As I said, keep that in the back of your mind, and I'll point out at the end of the session some of the sessions that are happening at SOTEC that deal with this. So first, Fox. I think everybody knows who Fox is, but I'll just do a little thing. First, cable network programming. So we own a lot of different channels: Fox Business Channel, Fox News, National Geographic, FX, etc. Internationally, we're huge, actually. Fox International Channels is in 144 countries. I'm not actually sure how many countries there are, but it sounds like 144 has to be a pretty good percentage of countries. Its revenue alone is $2 billion, and it has, I think, 6,000 employees now. Star is like the DirecTV of Asia, with very large in India, Hong Kong, China. Filmed entertainment, which is the major Fox brands, which is the big movies that we do, like Prometheus. Fox Searchlight's the smaller, sideways kind of movies, my personal favorites. And then Blue Sky's our animation unit, who does movies like Ice Age. Then television, we have 27 broadcast television stations, and we have, you know, a slew of shows. I'm sure someone watches one Fox show: New Girl, Modern Family, Sons of Anarchy, American Idol, House, Glee. You know, we have a lot of shows. And then we used to be big in internet. We used to own MySpace, and I think at one point 15 different internet companies. We've sold them all except for IGN, but we have IGN left. It's a gaming site. If anybody has teenage kids, they probably know the site. Now, my group is interesting. I started out in film, the film side. I never acted, but I did start in the film side of the IT business. That sounded a little weird when I said it, sorry. And about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, we got moved over to be a shared service across the Fox companies. And the thought process was that we would do the things that were non-differentiating across the Fox companies, allowing the CIOs in the other groups to focus on things that were differentiating. So as you can imagine, what's not differentiating is all the kind of non-movie stuff. I always say I do the boring corporate. So I do HR, payroll, finance, legal, those type of things. And the idea is that it should be across all of the companies that are here: Fox News, IGN, whatever, Fox Sports. We pretty much provide services for any company within the News Corp umbrella that wants to use our services. So I do a lot of work, and Ben, who's speaking later, does most of it for me, work for News Corp itself. So News Corp is very, very small, and our IT organization is much larger than theirs, so we provide most of their systems for them at this point. And then Dow Jones, we do some systems for Dow Jones. The thing that's interesting about this, and I want to point it out in relation to things that I'll talk about later, this is a non-mandatory shared service. And so we really are a vendor to the other companies. And that has a lot of challenges with it. For one, I don't have any money to spend on development, like a vendor might. So everything that I do has to be allocated back to business units. They have to buy into it. They have to accept the costs. And it makes it very difficult to do new things sometimes. But my point will be, you have to do it anyway. So, IT transformation. I really do think that IT's in a position where things are transforming at light speed right now. And again, my point is that we need to all address the things that are going on. So there was a study in The Economist just recently, and they interviewed a number of CEOs and asked them a bunch of questions about IT and the role of IT. 57% said that they think IT is changing significantly. 12% said that they thought there was a need for a complete overhaul. And 43% of those said that they view IT as a commodity service that should be bought and used as needed. Clearly, that's a lot different than the way that we have all done things in the past. So trends. I always use Gartner for my trends, and you know, I think they always are a pretty good mainstream view of what's happening in the industry. And again, I picked the ones that I thought were the most provocative because I wanted you to really think about what these trends mean to you and your organization, and you as an employee. So first, business executives are seeing the increased value in IT and a diminishing value proposition in IT departments. What that means is they're going to buy IT, but they don't think that they need you to do that. Two, the continued trends towards consumerization and cloud computing highlight the movement. And if you think about that, consumerization, people can buy stuff, you know, directly. iPads, the day they came out, we had, I don't know, probably 100 executives bring them in to the office and say, here, I bought this and I want to use it. And can I get my mail now? So, I mean, you know, people expect to be able to do that. And cloud computing, you know, and I spoke here a couple of years ago on cloud computing. I'm a firm believer in it. But it does bring with it challenges. Specifically, most of these vendors go directly to your customers and market products. Salesforce.com will talk to the sales organization or marketing these days. And HR, there's vendors out there all over the place. And you know, an example that I had early on, probably 6 years ago now, it was that a vendor went directly to the HR department, sold them a recruiting system, which they bought because it was software as a service. It hit their operating income line, so they didn't need me to do that. But when they actually received it, they didn't know how to connect it. They didn't know how to have, you know, a log on for it. They didn't integrate to anything, and so they bought it, and then they said, here, Cindy, deal with this. And it turns out it didn't do half the stuff that they thought it did. It didn't have the appropriate security, et cetera, et cetera. So again, those are the things that are happening that are definitely going to affect you whether you think they are or not. Sometimes it happens you don't even know it's happening already. IT budgets are moving out of the control of IT departments. Obviously, this goes with the items from before. Mobile devices continue to outgrow PCs. So, you know, at Fox, for example, when I got there, it was probably 95% PCs, I'd guesstimate. You know, there were some BlackBerries around, but it was, you know, it was a big deal to get a company paid for a BlackBerry. At this point, there are iPads everywhere. We're probably at least 30% Macs now. It might be even higher than that. And tablets everywhere. So, you know, the days when you could control what people have, I think for most organizations is over. The availability of large amounts of data will overwhelm most companies' ability to understand the data. So we've all, you know, heard big data conversations. It is the, you know, cloud was the big thing 2 years ago. This year and last year, big data is all the rage of conversation on the cool thing. And I think the point is that most people don't know what to do with that data. And, you know, most companies and most people, there's just more data than people know what to do with. And then I did cheat on this last one. This was a 2011 trend, my next one, but it is so relevant, I just didn't want to not have it. So by 2017, the chief marketing officer will spend more money on information technology than the chief information officer. So again, another trend that says the world that we knew it's not the same. And we need to really move along with it. So I love this quote, so I always use this one. This is Eric Schmidt from Google. So this is about big data. There were 5 exabytes of information created between the dawn of civilization through 2003, but that much information is now created every 2 days. So again, this goes to the big data conversation. There is more data than we know what to do with, and in reality, it doesn't matter whether data exists if it isn't in a form that people can use. So the question is always, what information can I get out of the data that I need? What business challenges can it address? And how can I get it to people in a meaningful way? Because if I don't give it to them in a way that they can use, they're not going to use it. And I want to give a couple examples of big data. Because I really think it's very, very interesting to me. It's one of the things I personally find very fascinating what you can do with this. So Fox, honestly, has been late to the table in big data, partially because generally big data is considered a consumer thing. You're tracking consumer information, sentiment analysis, what do people like, don't like. And for studios, generally, we don't deal with end customers or haven't historically. We sell to distributors and to theaters and whatever. So we don't really know, we have a relationship with the person who actually consumed the product at the end. We're actually changing on that item. But 2, 3, I think, examples I want to give you about the ways these are getting used. I'll give one that just happened with Fox. We have a movie, Prometheus, that had finished theatrical release and was just about to go into physical distribution, so you could buy DVDs. And they wanted to use this to try to see what would happen if they digitally released it at a lower price point, kind of a mid-price point, $14.99, just for that little brief period before the physical DVD came out. They wanted you to only be able to buy it. You had to download and buy it, you couldn't rent it. And they went ahead and did this. It was very, very successful. But what's interesting is that one of the concerns with content is always, are you cannibalizing one market with another market? And if you are, and the other market's more profitable, if the DVD sale, physical sale, had been more profitable than the digital download, you always want to take that into account. So they ran all the data on the sales through afterwards, and it was, you know, big data. And we're able to determine that I believe it was 30% of the people who purchased through this were first-time downloaders of movies and or habitual renters. So they were able to determine that 30% was a new market that they hadn't tapped before. So that's an example of how you can use big data. 2 other interesting ones I want to use that I think you might not think of is Toyota. And I've heard the CIO, Zach Hicks, for Toyota talk about this, and I just found it fascinating. After the accidents or the issues with the Prius, they actually pulled data from a bunch of different governmental agencies, transportation, safety, et cetera, pulled all this data in and started just crunching it to figure out if they could tell from the data what was going on. And through that, they decided that they actually didn't think that the issue was with the car. And without that data, they wouldn't have been as confident in making some of the decisions that they made, and that big data that they culled, that no one even asked them. You know, Zach's story is he did it on his own, that people didn't even know that they needed, they were able to use to make really interesting decisions. And I was talking to somebody from a Big Five yesterday at lunch, and she was saying that they did the same thing for after the Dark Knight shooting, that they decided that they had this sentiment analysis solution, and they pulled all this data on how people were responding to the incident at the theater, and they, without Warner Brothers asking, took it to Warner Brothers and said, this is what we're seeing, how people are reacting and what they're doing. And it ended up really shaping how they responded to that tragedy. So it's interesting. I think there's a lot of uses for big data, but as all things like devices, you really have to think of, you know, when phones came out, you had to think about, do people need them at work? What are they going to do with them? Same thing with this. You do have to make those decisions. Is this viable in a business environment, and what is it solving and from a business point of view? So I thought it would help to kind of demonstrate how these trends, I think, are affecting our day-to-day lives. And so I just picked a few things to kind of talk about. So performance criteria. I'm old enough that I remember the day when the status reporting that used to go out from IT was all these graphs with server uptime and application uptime, and, you know, where your projects were in there with little green, yellow, or red dots about whether they were on time, on budget. Those days are way gone. And, you know, those things are given. You have to do them, but nobody wants to hear about it, right? That's not what's important. So you just need to do it. You don't need to show it, because they know when you're not up. And they know when your projects aren't online. So telling them that is not important. What it's all about now is, what value-added services are you bringing to the business? Are you supporting the devices that they want to use? Are you, giving them an ability to do what they want to do on a mobile device? Those types of things are what matter. And the second thing that matters is, how fast can you do it? Because if you can't do it fast enough, they're not going to get it from you. They're going to get it from somebody else. So agility and speed to market is really, really important. Delivery. So it used to be, if somebody wanted technology, they had to talk to me, right? They couldn't get it on their own. They couldn't buy it on their own. They couldn't install it on their own. They still can't install it on their own. But, so they were the... we were the provider, and we knew that they were coming to ask us for these things. Well, again, those days are way gone. So now, as I gave the example of HR, they can run out and buy their own system. They might have had a non-integrated application had I not helped them, but they would have muddled on their own. As I said, those days are gone. So now it's all about what is the best way to provide the service. Should you outsource it? Should you put it in the cloud? Should you do software as a service? All those are brokering activities as opposed to providing activities. And I truly believe that IT adds value in these. For those who might have heard my little SaaS conversations a couple of years ago, what IT brings to the table is methodology, which all you guys, you're the keys for this. You understand this. You understand how to do a project. You understand how to do a TCO. Because, right, a lot of times they think it looks cheaper, but they're not really thinking about the fact that when you add that subscription over a number of years, it's actually quite a bit of money. So you can do total cost of ownership exercises. And most importantly, I think you can validate that the product actually meets the functional requirements, and that things like security, privacy, those types of things are handled in the product, and that the contracts, I'm a big contract wonk, that the contracts actually address everything you need to have it addressed so that your company is secure. And once you tell somebody that you're going to do that, and if they work with you, you'll do that for them, they're going to come back, because they don't want to be responsible for any issues that might occur. Standardization, I'm also old enough to remember the days then when we were really proud as IT organizations because we put in that monolithic ERP system that was one instance, vanilla, and everybody used it and tried to fit a square peg in a round hole. And we were really proud of that. And again, those days are gone. So now it's all about multi-platform. It has to work on every device. It has to work in the way that's specific to the business that I do. It has to be personalized. In a perfect world, you know, a dashboard should be the dashboard that you want to see with the data that you care about. Personalization, and then localization, which is all around if I'm in France, I want the date to look like this, and I want to know what the local address formats look like, whatever. Key customers for years, you know, I've mostly worked with finance, operations, I'm big on HR, but those types of kind of more operational areas. I think every company is finding already, or if they aren't, they will very shortly, that marketing is really driving a lot of the spend, which is what we talked about with the previous kind of Gartner trend. Devices, we've talked about this. It used to be PCs, and now it's, you know, any device anybody finds that they think is really cool. And that comes into the office as soon as they buy them. So clearly, if there's this much change going on in the fundamental way, whoa, that we do stuff, it's going to affect the way we do business. So I thought I'd do a little bit on marketing because I'm not sure how much you guys actually keep track of marketing and why everybody keeps saying it's different. If I'm telling you something you know already, sorry, but for me, it's always interesting to kind of look at what's happening on the business side. So it used to be marketing, I'll use the analogy, it was blast as much as you could and hope some of it stuck. And you know, you were trying to get some brand awareness, preferably some brand preference and some loyalty. And you just, whatever you could afford is what you did. So you blasted across TV, radio, et cetera, trying to just hope that somebody will find what you did compelling. Over the last few years, has changed to more relationship marketing, which is really a more specific, I know you like this, I'm going to target this to you. And it's about some sort of an engagement where you're doing the like versus not like on Facebook. You're maybe subscribing to a Twitter feed on something, those types of things. And that hasn't gone away. But what's happened even more is that people are trying to target even further. And so it's all about this data-driven marketing that's saying, you know, very specifically, we know that you like, you know, I'll use fanboy, Comic-Con kind of movies. And so therefore, we're going to get some maybe preview information about what you think about our trailer, for example. And we start doing that very early on as a way to kind of judge what's going on with what we're doing and how effective it is, but as well to draw word of mouth into the process. And people are using things like customer relationship management, things for that, big data, loyalty systems, et cetera. And so again, you know, and if you think about that, that's why the spend is going way up, because we're really talking about, this is all systems, right? This is all IT. You're not going to do big data analysis without a pretty hefty little system behind it as well. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what a CIO needs to focus on every year in order to be successful in their jobs. And what I'm going to say to you is this is not just the CIO's focus. It should be your focus as well. Your slice of the pie might be, you know, different, but it's still, all of these things affect whatever it is that you do. So whatever, you know, the larger pie is, you still should be doing the same thing with whatever you're responsible for. So first, industry. What's happening in the industry that you're in? Is it expanding? Is it declining? Is it transforming? Media, for example, a few years ago, we were having huge issues with ad sales when the recession was happening on. And so there was just a real contraction of the amount of money that was available within the studios. Over the last few years, and it will continue, digitization is the trend. And a lot of the focus is around how fast can we change from physical distribution of movies to it's created digitally, it's distributed digitally, it's secured digitally, et cetera. And you know, those things drive what's happening at the company that you're in and the IT projects that you'll be doing. Customers. You need to know who your customers are. You need to know how they perceive you, both internally and externally. You need to know how they want to engage with you. Are they going to Twitter with you? Are they going to go to your Facebook page and deal with you? How do they want to deal with you as a customer? And as I said with Fox, for example, it used to be that we really didn't deal with our end-to-end customers, and that's a huge, huge focus for us right now, is trying to get a better picture of our end-to-end customers. Technology. Clearly, we all need to keep abreast of what's happening with technology, and we want to know what's out there and how it affects what we're doing, both from a new technology, new services, but also what can it do to reduce the cost of the services that we already have, or to enhance the services that we already have. And mobile's the good example for that. You can put mobile front ends on, you know, that vanilla SAP system you put in 10 years ago and still make it much more user-friendly to manage. Services, what services do you provide as an organization? Is it still the right set of services? Are you the best provider of that service? Should you now be brokering that or doing that? All of those, you know, looking at your service portfolio, I think is something, honestly, my group does at least once a year, a very formal process of saying, can we get rid of this? Are people still using it? Could it be subsumed by something else we've bought or built? Does it need upgrading? Whatever it is, we actually do that hard look every year, and we have simplified quite a bit over the years. Vendor partners. I'm a true believer that in this environment where you're brokering more and you're asked to do more with less, your vendor partners really have to be viewed as partners. They can be the way to enable a lot of the things that you want to do. And they have a point of view that's different than the one that you have. They're talking to a lot of different customers. And so setting up those relationships with your vendors where you're exploiting on both sides, those win-win relationships with them, is really important. And you need to be always looking at, are your vendor partners the right partners for where you are and where the vision is for where you're going to be in the next year or two. And I'll talk a little bit about how I think you should work with vendors. Finance. In my perfect world, this would not be an issue, but unfortunately, it is my primary issue at every moment, is what is the financial situation of your organization and your company? And, you know, should you be investing? Should you be pulling back? You know, what's going to get funded? What's not going to get funded in the environment that you're at? Unfortunately, for all of us, we have to pay attention to that, just like we do at home. Peers, you want to know what your peers are doing. I'm a firm believer in knowing what your peers are doing. It's actually, from a studio perspective, we're kind of a very small, tight group of people. Most of us have worked at more than one studio, if you remember, I've worked at two. And so it's a very compelling conversation with our business to say, well, we've talked to the other studios and we're all doing this, or the two are doing this and we're doing this. And people want to know what's going on with peer groups in their industries, as well as you want to know what your peers from an IT standpoint are doing at other companies. Because again, you want to make sure that you're staying relevant and you're staying at least comparable, hopefully a little more on top of things. And then lastly, your organization. You need to make sure that your organization, one, understands whatever it is you're trying to do, that they have the right skills to do it, and that they have the right skills for where you want to be. And also that they feel empowered and motivated to do their jobs. And all of those things are constantly influencing us. Both are influencing us in, and we're influencing them out by, you know, talking to other people. And I would just say, you know, kind of take time every year, and, you know, we try to probably do it every quarter, to really look at all those things for the environment that you have. So, after all that kind of trend and doom and gloom, what I think the agenda personally for me for this year, and I think this is pretty similar for most of my peers, is one, obviously value-added services are key. You need to be looking at mobility, you need to be looking at bring your own device if you're not doing it, you need to look at how you're dealing with social media, all those types of things. You need to look at increased agility. How fast can you provide it? And for this, you know, all those things we talked about from a technology standpoint can increase your agility, right? Cloud-based services do increase your agility. You can deploy them faster. So, you know, there are cases where that makes sense, and there's platform as a service, there's cloud, there's software as a service. All of those are things that you can use to increase your agility. As well, you know, just changing your methodology, using a more agile methodology for development, I think is huge that way. The more you can get stuff in people's hands, even if it's a small piece, an iterative piece, it makes a big, huge difference. Increase revenue. Clearly, I never increase revenue. I just spend money. But I do think the more that you can play up what you do that increases revenue and focus your kind of marketing about your own work on things that increase revenue, those are important. So it's more about visibility. Those are emphasis on those, but I do think those matter. Reduced operating costs. So I'm always hugely under cost imperatives. Because everybody has to pay for my services, it can sometimes be ugly from a cost perspective. But I read a Gartner study from, I think it was only last month, that said 80% of IT spend is keeping the lights on. And if you think about that, that leaves only 20% for doing new things. Well, okay, nobody cares that you kept your ERP system up, right? So the more you can reduce your operating costs for things that you already do, the more money you have to spend on new things. And new technology is great for that. I mean, for those who deal with infrastructure is the easiest one, you know, to get those big wins with. You know, when we moved to virtualization, it was crazy how much money we saved with that. I mean, it was just a huge paradigm shift that allowed us to save, you know, millions and millions of dollars. And cloud has a lot of those opportunities, et cetera. And again, the more that you can reduce that, the more you can spend on things that are fun. Innovation. I bring this up specifically after reduced operating costs on purpose because I don't know about your organizations, but I can tell you in my organization, I cannot fund innovation and put it in a budget, right? Somebody sees that on a budget, it's the first thing they're going to cut. So the only way I can fund innovation is either through begging, borrowing, and stealing, which I'll talk about in a bit, and I'm a firm believer in that. But on top of that, what we do is we try to reduce that operating cost, use that extra money to fund the innovation activities. And so again, the more that you can save, the more that you can spend on the fun stuff. Security and privacy. Security and privacy is like that, SLAs and on time, on budget. It's just one of those things you have to do. You just have to, because if you don't do it, you're not going to be working at the company anymore. And so, you know, cloud and software as a service, all those things are just upping the ante on where you can have problems. And Dropbox, for anybody whose company uses Dropbox, right? You didn't tell them they could use Dropbox, they just figured it out. And so now they're putting content that couldn't get stolen up on the cloud, and there's no security. So those are the things you just have to keep abreast of, because this is one of those, it's just if it gets you, it gets you. You don't want to be the one that pays the price for that one. Cost transparency. So this one you may not see as often, but I'm a firm believer in this. So because I'm a shared service, I've had to charge for everything I do. You know, everything I do gets charged out. If I paid for this conference, somebody else is paying for it, not me, right? So one of the things I've learned through doing that is that cost transparency is actually a pretty amazing tool if you can use it right. So when I say that, so what is the cost of a service that you provide? So we'll keep using our lovely ERP example. I use PeopleSoft Financials, for example. So I pay, say, $600,000 in maintenance. I have 15 people supporting it, I have, 15 servers, I have this much power and whatever. So I add all those up, say it's, I'm making all this up, by the way, say it's $3 million a year. And then on top of that, I know I'm producing, 15,000 AP payments, I'm making this, whatever. I take those, I divide each one of those up by the portion of their portion of that cost, and it says a invoice costs me $6 to produce. Believe it or not, for some, especially stuff like that, there actually are benchmarks for that that you can use to say, am I really cost effective? Expense reports are another one that's pretty easy to get outside comparisons for. And so you can really see whether or not you're actually doing it at a cost basis that makes sense. You can explain why it costs what it is to the business. But as well, you can drive behavior with it. And for example, I'll use mailbox storage. Everybody thinks they need to save everything in their mailbox forever, right? And it's really expensive to do that. You can tell them to get rid of it. They moan and complain and cry. And it's just not fun to have that conversation on a regular basis with people about their mailboxes, especially executives. And so, but when you start to say, okay, we're giving everybody this much space, but if you want more, you can have it. But we're going to charge you a surplus for it. It's amazing how much they don't need that mail anymore. And so I would just say, it's a lot of work. It probably took us 2 years to get our costs really right. I mean, we, came up with most of it, and you keep refining it over time. But I would say it's been a huge thing for us to be able to do that. So now I'm going to talk about, take kind of everything I just told you about what I think is changing and how I think you need to kind of deal with it. And I'm going to talk about what you can do to help your CIO with dealing with this agenda. So the first thing is you need to understand your organization's vision. And you need to understand the who, the what, the why. What are they trying to do over the next few years? And you need to really embrace that and then make sure that your projects and your initiatives tie to those strategies. And at Fox, we actually do a pretty good job of this. We do a 3-year strategic plan. We list out all the business drivers. We list out, all the initiatives. We tie everything to strategies, and we publish that to everybody every year. So if somebody tells me they don't know the vision, that's their problem, not mine, that I didn't communicate it. But I know lots of people don't have access to those things. Companies don't do them. That does not get you out of the fact that you need to understand it, because you still need it. There is one. So in the case where somebody hasn't talked to you about it, you just need to talk to your management to find out what they think it is, and just have a real conversation about, I want to understand what we're trying to do this year. What are the big things that matter? And having those same conversations with your slice of the business, they have an agenda. Everybody does. Everybody has a list of what they want to try to get done this year. And again, tying everything you do to those and articulating it back to them based on their agenda is really an important thing to do. Have a business mindset. Again, you have to understand the business to be relevant. You really do. And I was talking to somebody about this item, and a lot of times I see IT people will go to the business and say, how can I help you better with the services that I provide? That's a really specific question that you're going to get a really specific answer to. Somebody's going to answer, gee, I wish you'd automate this, or wish that I have a problem with that. Well, that's not what you want to know. What you want to know is what do they do? What are they trying to do over the next year? What are their issues? What are their challenges? You really need to understand where they're coming from and what they do. And, an open-ended conversation with them is going to give you so much more information so that when a specific request comes, you have context for it. And you can make sure that you're not addressing some little thing they asked for that really doesn't fit into the big picture that they're trying to get to. And, I think one of the things that I most love about being in IT is I feel like I know every piece of the business that I support, because I spend so much time with those people. I mean, I've been doing a lot of HR stuff over the last couple of years. I swear I could run an HR department now. I mean, seriously. I mean, and you know this because when you spend this much time with people in their systems, you know it as well as they do. And it really is important that you really do understand that from that perspective. And so if you're going to ask me, I want to answer the question of how. So I just had a mentoring lunch with somebody the other day, and I forget sometimes, because I've been doing this for a long time, that some people, you know, are not at a point where they actually know how to do this. So one, I said, have those conversations. That's the most thing. Conversation, conversation, conversation. But as well, read whatever the trade journals are for the slice of the business that you do. If you're supporting HR, read the HR journals. Go to the IROM conference. If you're supporting legal, do the same thing with legal. If you're doing marketing, go to the marketing conference, go to the Salesforce.com conference. You know, read periodicals, go to those conferences, go with the business to the conference they're going to. You're going to learn a lot. And again, you know, talk to your vendors, talk to your, you know, peers. It's amazing what you can get from there. Keep abreast of technology trends in the IT marketplace. So IT information used to be available really to IT people. But if you think about it now, it's in everything. I swear I get it in the stupid magazines in the airport sometimes. And it's, you know, you get it in the Wall Street Journal, has a really strong technology section. You know, Economist covers technology, Harvard Business Review, things that your business people are reading cover technology now. As well as the fact that just things like tablets are all over the place. So you need to be as abreast as your business people are. And you need to know, you need to be ready to answer the question when something goes out about how it affects what you're doing. So if somebody, the day the tablets came out, you needed to be able to tell people what you were going to do about those, what services you were going to be able to provide to them, when and why and how. And if there were issues with it, because we had issues with Apples for a while because you couldn't wipe them. That's been fixed for years, but at the time there was a period we wouldn't support iPhones, and we had a real reason and we could explain it, and it was okay. But you need to have that. You need to really know before you get asked, and you're going to get asked by your CIO. You're going to get asked by the business. So make sure that you have an answer to those questions. And then we talked about technology in terms of technology can be used to enable new services to the business, and you want to keep abreast of that. And as well, it can be used to do the reduced cost. So all of that is stuff you need to be on top of. So again, for those, I'm a big believer in conferences. I, you know, go to technology conferences. One of my favorites. I hate them when I'm there. But I love them afterwards, and I keep trying to remind myself why I'm there, that I really will get some value out of it, is there are speed dating vendor conferences. They are seriously the worst thing on the face of the earth while you're there. You spend a half an hour with all these vendors who all ask to talk to you, and 90% of what you hear, you're like, I really don't want to talk to you. And then two things come out of them that you never knew existed that you desperately needed. And so, you know, those things are super cool. We got a product called ClickView. I'm a big ClickView proponent for anybody who's ever used it. It's an in-memory BI tool that is the best thing ever. And I got that at my speed dating vendor conference. And it is really speed dating because it's all like, you're stuck together and then you're sitting there going, do I want to ever talk to this person again? So anyway, so that's how I say you should keep abreast of those things. And again, think about it in terms of the technology, what you already have, how you can enable it with new things, how you can reduce costs as well as do new services. Partner? Okay, so I said I'd talk about this. I'm a big firm believer on this, and it took me a while to get here because, as I said, I sometimes tend to be a little resistant in my vendor conversations, but I've learned to get over it. And I've realized that you really can do some lovely win-win things. So you can partner with your vendors, you can partner with your colleagues, you can partner with your customers. I'm saving the last one for a minute. But on the topic of vendors, so especially when we're talking about new technology, your vendors want you to use their new technology as much as you want to use it. And so when I said I had no money, I really did mean I have no money. And so, you know, for us, for my group in innovation, it was hard sometimes because I had to have somebody agree to fund something before I could even try it. And I'll use the ClickView example. You know, nobody wanted to pay it. It was going to be, you know, X hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get it up. On a per unit cost, it was really, really low. But I still had to have somebody who agreed to the initial hundreds of thousands. And no one would do that. So what we did is we went to them and we said, okay, help us build this POC. We'll use your licenses for free. We'll do it. At the end of it, if we like it, we'll buy it. If we don't, well, too bad, but you'll learn why we didn't like it, which is of value to you as well. And that's how I have it. That worked. We've got it. It's wonderful. And we do that all the time. I've bought very immature, from a company standpoint, SaaS vendors before because their product was the best, but the companies were amazingly immature. But I was willing to do that, and it was a win-win for us. They did everything I told them to do, and in return, I became a marquee customer. So, you know, if you help get your product to where I need it, I'll pay you back by speaking. I used to speak for Weizen. It was this small vendor all the time. And, you know, honestly, I truly believed they had a great product at the end. They didn't when we started. So, again, you know, they're there. And again, they have a different reach and a different information. So even just talking to them about what other people are doing is really, really valuable. But think about how you can make something you want happen in a short proof of concept. The other last one I want to mention, and I got to stay on time, is partnering with competitors. So no matter who your industry is, everybody's got, you know, competitors in the industry. And in some ways they're competitors, in some ways they are in the same boat you are with things that aren't competitive. So for example, with studios, piracy is huge. Well, that's not a differentiator, right? I reduced my piracy and Disney didn't. Doesn't help Disney or me. And so, for example, we recently put in a content fingerprinting system. Fingerprinting is just a little thing that, like YouTube will have, that knows it's our content. We put it up, and then when somebody puts pirated content up, we can tell that it's our content and ask YouTube to take it down. Well, obviously, YouTube gives us all the same format to give them back the fingerprints. There's no benefit for us doing it different than Sony does it, than Disney does it. So we ended up partnering with Disney, who had built something already. We took their thing, and now we've agreed whoever fixes it with whatever the new fingerprint is, will both use it. Why not? Saved money. We've traded systems with other studios before for back-end processing. Those things really can work. So think about that as well. And trading, we sometimes trade. I'll give you this if you give me that. Innovation. So we've talked about innovation a lot, I think, already, but I wanted to talk about the fact that those small POCs, I think, are the way to do these. And again, the point I want to make with this one, for innovation, what you want to do are really small things, and you want to do them so that they can fail. Innovation fails. And I like to do bake-offs too. So say you're going to try to look at 2 platform as a service products and figure out which one's best for you. Do 2 POCs on the same thing at the same time with the 2 products. One of them you're going to throw away. Both of them you may throw away. But you're going to have learned a lot in the process. And again, I think I can't think of a case I haven't gotten a vendor to help us do that. Either give us services or free licenses or something for the process of doing that. So that process of innovation, make them small, make them iterative, and I think that's really the way to win with those. And then I have one more thought on innovation. I think when everybody says innovation, they think about technology, and they think about the fact that, oh, what's the cool tool I want to play with today? That's not all it is at all. So if you look at this is Amazon's one-click. It totally revolutionized, you know, buying on the internet. You know, where you had to before enter the same information you'd entered with Amazon 52 times before, now it was done. And this was not done with new technology. This was done with old technology that existed, and somebody just thought about how to simplify it and do it differently. So innovation is also, how do I make the process that my end user is doing or my business is doing more on target? So it can be technology and it can be process. Market everything. I'm a firm believer in marketing. I think most IT people by nature are not good marketers. I know I wasn't. I think I am now. And part of it's just forcing yourself to do that. And you have to market your projects, right? In order to get them funded, you have to market them. You have to explain what they're about. You have to, and the more you explain them in the business terms I talked about, the better off you're going to be there. But once your project's in process, you still need to market it. You need to be showing people things and telling them and making sure that they're still engaged as you go through the process. And then most importantly, at the end of the project, go back and figure out how it worked. Figure out if it ended up saving the money that you thought it saved, or the time, or whatever. Because that's what you want to then promote afterwards, is what the actual outcome was from what you did. And in this one specifically, the more you can get the business to take that, that touting of the product, oh my God, you don't want to be tooting your own horn. You want them to be saying they did it and you just were along for the ride, right? Because that's what's really the big benefit. And actually, Ben just recently, with that content fingerprinting system that I talked about, they found a way to also do something that some other group wanted with the same system that did tracking of runs internationally so that we could recoup all the revenue that we wanted. The customer was so excited by this little thing Ben did that, I don't know, took a month or something, couple months. It wasn't huge for us. And he went and did huge presentations at this big conference in Europe a couple of weeks ago. And the more you can get your customers to own what you guys did together, the better off you are. Your organization, you need to market that externally and internally. Your products and services, you need to make sure people are aware of what you're doing. Again, I'll use Ben as an example because God forbid he's in my eyesight. But Monday, we're running an IT executive briefing with his key executives. Half the stuff we've told them about before. These briefings tend to be more about little technology things that we're doing. And so they got emails saying, oh, you can set up your phone to get your your email to get your voicemail. Oh, you can do this. Well, they never read anything. And so, a couple times a year, we try to get them all in a room and then we demo it all to them. And they think it's just fascinating, Then if there's a new iPad, we'll bring that in. And, it's just a kind of a little sales thing that we do. And it's huge. They love the thing. And so part of it is just telling them stuff they were too busy to even listen to you when you tried to tell it to them before. Your CIO, obviously, and then most importantly, yourself. Market yourself through the process. The more that you're out there, kind of presenting what's getting done and the accomplishments that are happening, that's good for you as well as for the company. So, we talked kind of about what you could do for your CIO. Now I'm going to talk about what you can do for you. And as you will see, it's almost exactly the same thing I said about what you can do for your CIO, but just twisted a little bit to be what you can do for yourself. The most important thing you can do is network. You can network above, below you, outside the company, inside the company. Now you guys are all here at a networking event. So please take my advice and use it and network. People love to talk about themselves. They really do. And nobody's going to mind if you ask them questions. And you can get so much information. People who have the same challenges you do. Lessons learned from vendors and implementations. I mean, I talk to everybody everywhere all the time. And it is the best way to figure out the resolution for a problem. Because somebody else has the same problem that you do. Socialize. I use this word instead of relationship management. So I think we all use the word relationship management and know that we're supposed to do this. Again, not good enough. What this is about actually creating some sort of personal connection with the people that you are dealing with. Whatever it is, and for everybody it'll be different. Maybe it's I have a bunch of triathletes at work now, and so, you know, I talk to them about their races, and I keep track of their races, and I know when they raced, and I know what their time was, you know, or maybe that they have kids and I have kids. Whatever it is, people want connections with other people, and I'm telling you, it goes a long way as to whether you're successful or not. Because if they like you and they think that they know you, they act differently than if you're just a coworker. Speak their language. Speak in business terms. And again, this isn't the old don't use IT jargon. Again, that's a given. But don't present in ways that don't matter to the business. I am constantly fighting with my direct reports about what they give me for my, I do a dashboard every month to all the executives. And I'll get something like, I fixed 15 problems in the contract management system. I'm like, well, who the heck cares? What in the world does that mean to anyone, right? What did you actually do? How did it affect the business? You know, talk to them in a way that means something to them. If you then enabled them to do casting at the production side, if that was what the 15 things was, that's what you want to tell them that you did. Build your brand. Think about what your own value proposition is. Really do this. I actually, my husband was just switching jobs, and somebody asked him what his value proposition was. And I said, what's my value proposition, right? And it's an interesting question. And think about what you think it is that you want to be known for. And whatever it is, be it. So if you want to be the SaaS system expert, which I was for a few years, I knew it inside and out. I read about it. I dealt with it. I could talk forever on it, right? If that's what I want to be, that's what I want to make sure people know me as. If I want to be the person who does program management globally, you know, whatever it is, keep abreast of it, read about it, and talk to people about it, and do it. So think about how you want to be perceived. Break the box. Another one I want to compare old days to now. Used to be, we said, think outside the box. Well, I think the main thing I'm trying to tell you today is that box doesn't exist. So it isn't breaking it, it isn't thinking outside it. We just have to provide what people want in a way that's valuable to them. So there are no best ways to do it. Just look at what the options are, figure out the best way to get it done. Share the credit. I think it's really important that you don't take credit for stuff alone, and because you always worked with someone else, whether it's the business, whether it's the infrastructure group and the applications group or whoever, share credit. And the more you do that, the more people are going to want to help you. So it really does help you be successful. And again, I try to make other people take all the credit because it's better. Everybody still knows I did it, but I don't need to take the credit for it. I just think it's really, really a good way to do it. And most importantly, own your work. When I look at employees, the most important thing I look at is do they take responsibility. And I'm going to pick on the PMPs in the room. So I have for a long time had a problem with people who had certifications because I had a few of them that worked for me for a while. It seems to be getting better, who thought that their job was to do the project plan and keep track of the ETCs and all that kind of stuff. Again, like SLAs, I don't care. That's a given. What matters is that you got the project done successfully and that you brought the team along and that what you delivered at the end of the day was what was needed. And I don't care who you are on the project, I expect everybody to take responsibility for the end product. And if they see something that's wrong, I expect them to speak up. If they see something that needs to be done, I expect them to do it. And so I'll just bring out, success is only when you deliver what is needed. It doesn't matter otherwise. I'd rather something was over budget and not on schedule if it ended up meeting the needs at the end of the day. So in summary, because I'm out of time, the main thing I want to say to you is loss of control. What I said to you today is all about we used to control things more than we do now, and that's just the way it works. So it used to be that technology and trends were the domain of IT. It no longer is, and SaaS, consumerization has really changed that and will continue to change it. And the most important thing that you can do as an IT professional is to add value. And you have to stay abreast of technology trends in the IT marketplace. You have to build strong relationships with both your business users and your suppliers and vendors. And you must find a way to add value, and most importantly, be perceived as adding value. And if people don't perceive that you're adding value, it just doesn't matter.